comes
I
back.
see it.
Okay.
I can see you. Oh,
Now you really can't see me.
nope, I cannot see you now.
Now
Now
you.
I can see you.
All right, we got another edition of Beyond the Analytics, and I think that what we do is certainly beyond the analytics. I think that people in all stripes get too caught up in numbers and don't get caught up in reality enough. I want to sing your praises. I've been going through the archives of some of your former draft, I guess, film studies on college players. And I want to bring up I just pulled it out of the hat. Didn't cherry pick it at all. Honestly, I just pulled it out of the hat. It was Jo Jo Domman. Goes to the Indianapolis Colts, and I think that it's a testament to your work, to the amazement of the fan base. Anyway, they were very shocked that he didn't even go in the draft. So he walks on and Jo Jo Domman in college in Nebraska. You can correct me if I'm wrong. He was linebacking?
Correct.
Correct. The reason I say it, I'll get into that in a minute, just to verify it. But I was just going through his. So he makes the 53. He goes in as a undrafted. So he makes the 53. He makes plays on special teams, and then what happens is he starts filling in for starters. Now, on a defense, it's pretty. You can say what you want about the Indianapolis Colts offense, but their defense is pretty good, pretty decent. Not paper tiger decent, but actually pretty decent. And this guy, as a walk-on, but just not only makes a 53, makes plays on special team, then gets elevated to to rotate, with injured starters. And he's making plays too. And they were talking about making him kind of one of those tweener safety type linebacking. What do you think of that type of role for him?
Well, I just want to say this before I get into it. Jo Jo Domman was one of my favorite players at Nebraska. He was a very solid piece for that defense at Nebraska for Eric Shenander. Him and Luke Reimer were a really good duo at the time, and then JoJo left, and Nebraska really hasn't filled that role since he's left. I think Matt Rule has found some people. But going to your Jo Jo Domman point, I don't think that turning him into a hybrid safety linebacker is beneficial for his development. I think having him as an off-ball linebacker with that Gus Bradley 4-3 cover 3 defense, Tampa 2 style with some Tampa 2 plays in there, I don't think that's beneficial for Jo Jo Domman. But also, I don't think that a lot of people are talking about that he was going to a really good linebacking room at the time. They had Ozurike, who they drafted out of Stanford, who eventually went to the New York Giants. And I think that's the Colts recognizing that they really didn't need to pay Ozurike because he's getting up there in age.
Yeah.
And he was asking for a lot of money. So you had a guy waiting in the wings that you were developing correctly. You pair him next to a Darius Leonard, you pair him next to a Zaire Franklin, he's going to benefit from that. But again, that scares me that you say that because I haven't heard that. But
well, I think it was just talk.
Yeah, I just don't think that.
I don't think they actually did it.
Turning him into what the Cardinals did to Isaiah Simmons is going to benefit Jo Jo Domman personally and for that defense and for that team. I think having him strictly as an off-ball linebacker, you move Darius Leonard to the middle linebacking room, and then you have Jo Jo Domman use his sideline-to-sideline ability with that very fast coverage-centric skills that he does have that a lot of people weren't talking about coming out of Nebraska. And I did a film breakdown on that guy, and just watching his development. And he was a transfer from Colorado State, and him coming into that Nebraska defense, solidifying that middle linebacking room, next to a Luke Reimer. And then, watching his film, I mean, he was just a very sound athlete when I was breaking down the film on him. And I said, going to the Colts, I think it was one of the best things that the Colts could have done. And getting him as an undrafted free agent is just a testament to that scouting department and that front office up there in Indianapolis. And say what you want about the Indianapolis Colts, but they do have a sound scouting department. They do have a really sound front office there up there in Indianapolis, outside of the owner meddling here and there. But I think Jo Jo Domman is going to be a very good piece for. He might not be a Drew Greenwell for the Colts. He might not be a Fred Warner, but he is a Robin to the Batman. So you have Darius Leonard, who's the Batman, and then you have your Robin, which is Jo Jo Domman. So I just think Jo Jo Domman going to the Colts and them developing him correctly under User Rate Gay and under Darius Leonard and Zaire Franklin, I just think that was one of the better undrafted pickups for the Indianapolis Colts at the time.
Now let's stay on the subject of linebacking, and we're beyond analytics, so we go beyond numbers. I don't think when you just rattle off numbers, you were talking about Robins to Batmans. There are organizations out there that just get Robins, and that's good enough. And I don't think they really understand roles of linebacking. And can you explain? Let's just talk about one aspect of linebacking, because I think linebacking is more complex than analytics gives it credit for. Oh, you got so many tackles, Let's talk about coverage. We got into a conversation about coverage. You just did a video on Trotter Jr., Jerimiah Trotter Jr., and you're looking at him coming into the pro ranks. But you were talking about how there's different types of coverage linebacking, because we have people that just look at analytics and start saying that, this person is not a very good coverage linebacker, and that may be true for a 3-4 system, but that may not be true for a 4-3 system. So can you explain the dynamics of coverage linebacking to people that, all they ever hear is just numbers and tackles and all this nonsense. But why don't we first talk about the importance in today's NFL? And I don't know, maybe you can school me on the importance of it in the college ranks, but specifically the NFL, what is the importance of coverage linebacking?
Well, the importance of coverage linebacking has been going back for about, I would say, 2-3 decades, in my personal opinion. I mean, the NFL has completely turned into a passing league more than a running league, in my personal opinion. Yes, there are some teams that stick to the running game phase, like the Patriots, and, build off of that. But a lot of teams in the National Football League have completely abandoned the running game for being a run-centric heavy team. You got the Titans, for example. But having great coverage linebackers is so beneficial for your defense, especially if you have that push up the middle. And, you can have the best coverage linebackers in the world, but that isn't going to benefit the defense unless you have the interior pass rush up the middle. That has been proven for the past couple Super Bowls, going back from the day football started. So coverage-centric linebackers, the NFL has gone a lot towards the middle of the field. And you have guys like Josie Jewell who are very good run defenders, but their weaknesses are predicated more in the middle of the field when it comes to the pass defense phase. You guys have Fred Warner, who I believe is the best coverage linebacker in football, Roquan Smith, Devin Whites, Levante Davids when he was in his prime, guys like Eric Kendricks, guys like that. Even recently, the 2015 Denver Broncos Super Bowl with Brandon Marshall and Danny Trevathan, they had a very unique ability to lock down the middle of the field, but also have great sideline-to-sideline instinctual ability. And I think that's what a lot of people forget about when they look at linebackers is I look at your situational awareness of where you are at in the middle of the field in terms of how is your situational awareness when they're doing a Texas route on you? Where are you lined up during that time? If they're doing an overhanging route on you, how are you able to turn your hips and use your footwork to be able to instinctually know what that receiver or tight end or running back is doing to you in the middle of the field? But we can talk about the middle of the defense all you want. I want my linebackers to have great sideline to sideline ability. Because are you going to negate a 5 to 10 yard gain to a 2 to 3 yard gain? Are you an elite tackler? Okay, you have to have so many good traits when it comes to the linebacking core that you can't just rely on your run defense because and you can't have stiff hips as a linebacker. I don't look at just one phase as a linebacker. I look at a lot of things when it comes to that due to the fact that I think linebackers, and you have Pro Football Focus that diminishes it, and you have all these analytical people that diminish the linebacking room. I think the linebacking room is one of them. I think I would take coverage linebackers over my corners because I would build this from the inside out, not the outside in. If I was running a team, I would have focused strictly on my interior pass rush and my coverage linebackers because I don't think a lot of people give credit to those two positions. They don't. And when you look at the coverage linebackers, strictly what you're saying, I don't think a lot of people understand the importance of the middle of the field in today's NFL. You have to have guys like a Zaven Collins, but I also look at size too. You can't have a 5'9" like a KD Davis who has some good ability to his game, but he's 5'9". I look for those Zaven Collins types, those 6'4s, those 6'2s that can neutralize the size, but also has the hip-to-hip fluidity, also has great footwork, also can just lock down the middle of the field. So then you can have your interior pass rush do the work for you. Because if you have interior pass rush, it's going to benefit your coverage linebackers more than anything else.
It'll help everything. How are the college ranks developing these linebackers in these coverage linebacking roles for their next step into the NFL?
I think what I've seen over the past decade is a lot more coverage linebackers coming out in the NFL draft, and then I think that's a testament to college football because a lot of the college football ranks run a lot of spread offenses. You have to have elite linebackers. If you're going to stop that spread, you're going to have a guy like a Zaven Collins that can do it all. You're going to have a guy like a Fred Warner that can do it all, a Roquan Smith, a Devin White, that have elite speed, but also situational awareness. I don't think a lot of people talk about that. You have to have good situational awareness as a linebacker.
What does that mean?
What it means is you have to have situational awareness. If they're going to be running a spread offense, you're going to have to be able to be disciplined in your sets. Very disciplined. Very, very disciplined.
What is that? Go ahead, get into what that means.
What, the situational awareness or the discipline?
Set in your sets, being disciplined in your sets.
Well, you have to have good hip-to-hip fluidity and good footwork. That's what I'm talking about, discipline. You have to be disciplined in your sets when you're lined up at a certain point on the field when you're being a coverage linebacker or you're stopping certain offenses in the league. If you're going out and covering a receiving back like an Alvin Kamara, you cannot be dysfunctional. Your sets. You can't be a Josie Jewell. The reason I bring up Josie Jewell is because he is the perfect example of a Robin, in my personal opinion, where they say he's good enough and you are stuck with just mediocrity in the middle of your defense because he doesn't have the traits.
You don't have coverage linebacking. You're stuck with run stopping, and you've given up completely on the coverage linebacking aspect of your play.
Well, let's just say this. It's not just you're stuck with run defense. Let's talk about that for a second. Even with Josie Jewell being a good run defender, he still struggles because he has short arms and he can't wrap up and tackle on a consistent basis here. So when I am talking about guys like Fred Warner and Jo Jo Domman and guys like that, I'm not saying Jo Jo Domman is Fred Warner because Fred Warner is just an elite athlete. Rather than that, let's do JoJo and your guy, Zaven Collins, out there in Arizona, who I believe Fangio wanted in that draft, and I don't think a lot of people are talking about. but that's for a different subject for a different day. And we already talked about that. The two things that those two guys have in common is they're so disciplined in their sets. Their situational awareness is at an all-time high. Their IQ is on another level when it comes to understanding, okay, where I need to be at the middle of the field. Oh, I'm at the middle of the field. Okay, I'm okay. But where are you at in the middle of the field? How are you be able to use your hips, how to turn with certain receivers, turn with running backs, and how are you able to situational awareness turn at the right time? Because turning at the right time and being in your sets at the right time is built in through player development, is built in through understanding where you are at on the field. You can't just be, oh, I'm in the middle of the defense and I don't need to be disciplined in my sets. You have to be disciplined in your sets because anything can happen in the middle of the field because the NFL and the college ranks are predicated in the middle of the field. That's just the reality of the situation. So I think going back to the college ranks and how are they developing, I think you're seeing more and more of those 6'2", 6'4" coverage-centric linebackers that have elite speed. Isaiah Simmons, Zaven Collins, Jo Jo Domans of the world. Guys like that understand where they're at in the middle of the field, and I think that's a testament to what the college ranks are doing in the NFL.
I think some NFL teams short circuit that understanding of the role of the linebacking because you've got analytics diminishing it. The numbers, not understanding, when you take a look and break down film, do it from all 22 perspective. So you got that working against in some teams. Some teams totally get it. I think there's teams that completely understand it. So that's going to get to what happens too when you got to explain to me the differences between coverage linebacking and a 3-4 versus a 4-3 and any other kind of defensive system that would determine who you would get to. You're hoping that your defense and offenses are on the same sheet of music. You're not mixing systems up. So if you're sticking to one system, whether it's 4-3 or 3-4, what I'm trying to get at is how does that player that you get for coverage, how is it, how do let me put it this way? Are there different types of coverage linebackers for different systems? Is what I'm getting at.
Yes. There's different.
The differences.
Well, the differences are 3-4 defense. Let's talk about the 3-4 defense. You have two linebackers on the field. You have your Mike, and then you have your other linebacker. So again, when you're running the 4-3 system, you have three. You have your Mike, and you have your two off-ball linebackers. In certain systems, in 4-3 systems, you still got, base 4-3 systems, 4-3 under defenses, 4-3 coverage centric defenses. It's just what are you predicating? Let's go to Jo Jo Domman, for example. He is an off-ball coverage centric linebacker. Drew Sanders is the same way. Those guys have a unique ability to not be the Mike linebacker in a 4-3 defense. For instance, you have the Philadelphia Eagles who have Nakobe Dean and who's going to replacing TJ Edwards. TJ Edwards in that 4-3 was the middle Mike linebacker. He was the one that was calling out the plays on defense. He's your Mike. Josie Jewell is the Mike for the Denver Broncos. He wears the green dot. He calls out the stuff. If I think the Mike linebacker position, in my personal opinion, is the most important position on the field. You have to have high IQ. That's why Fred Warner wears the dot. That's why Roquan Smith. Those guys are Mike linebackers. Those guys are the quarterbacks of the defense. And they're the ones that call out where to be at the right time. And if I'm building a team, I want my Mike linebacker to have an high IQ and situational awareness packages where they need to be at the time. If you're running a 4-3, I want my two off-ball linebackers to understand you need to be here, you need to be there. Because when you watch the NFL and you watch the college ranks, what's the one thing that the Mike linebacker does? He walks up to the line of scrimmage and he puts the defensive linemen where they need to be and which gap assignments they need to be. That's what Zaven Collins does in Arizona, for example. So if I'm building it, the Mike linebacker to me is the most important position. That's why Danny Trevathan was so elite, because Danny Trevathan can instinctually understand where we needed to be at the right time. So if I'm building the team, the Mike linebacker position in a 3-4 and a 4-3 defense would be the one that I would be targeting the most. And then you can have the two Robins as your off ball in the 4-3. And you can have an Robin to the 3-4 by your Mike linebacker. So Fred Warner, Eric Kendricks when he was in his prime, Levante David. I mean, what the Buccaneers did was so unique because they drafted Devin White as a top 5 pick. They didn't draft him to be the Mike, because they had a guy in Levante David who played for the University of Nebraska who was very instinctual and was a smart football player at the Mike linebacker position. So he helped those guys in terms of not just the linebackers, but also the interior defensive linemen to be at the right place at the right time and which gap assignments they needed to be at. Because if you watch the All-22 film, which I know you do, here's the key. When you're watching it, watch what those Mike linebackers do. They walk up to the defensive line and they literally pat them behind and say, you got to go over here, you got over here. And the Mike linebacker goes back and then he's talking with his off-ball linebackers because he wants them to be at the right place at the right time.
Okay, well, now explain to me coverage. Let's get back to the coverage subject. So why would you want a guy who's in a 3-4? What kind of a guy? Okay, let's start with 3-4. We'll really focus it. What kind of a coverage linebacker works in a 3-4 that you necessarily don't want to get him in? You don't want to bring in a 4-3 coverage guy. You want to bring in the 3-4 coverage guy. How does he fit into the 3-4 system, that coverage?
So a perfect example of a 3-4 linebacker, there's two. Coverage backer. There's two, Zaven Collins and Roquan Smith. I want those guys because here's the thing. I think in a 3-4 defense, you need more of that size than a 4-3 defense. I think that's what I'm trying to get at is when you're talking about 3-4 systems, you only have two linebackers on the field. So I'm looking for size. I'm looking for those 6'4", 250-pound linebackers that are very instinctual in coverage. I want them to be my quarterback of the defense like Zaven Collins. Roquan Smith is that way. Roquan Smith isn't as big as Zaven Collins, but the one thing about Roquan Smith is he is an all-around player. So you can plug him in a 4-3 defense, but I think the strength of him is in a 3-4 defense. I think that elevates his strengths because you saw what he was in Chicago in a 4-3, didn't look very good. So I think Roquan Smith, the one unique thing I like about Roquan Smith is his IQ is off the charts. I mean, man, when you think about Roquan, I mean, I don't talk about his athleticism because I knew that coming in from Georgia, but his instinctual ability and situational awareness to be at the right place at the right time and understanding that your hit-to-hit fluidity and your footwork is going to benefit you at the end. You can have the elite athleticism all you want, but I want a high IQ, elite hit-to-hit fluidity, elite footwork, and understanding where you need to be at. And that's
awareness.
Yes, and that's the same thing with Zaven Collins. But if I am running a 3-4 defense, I'm looking for those 6'4", 250-pound linebackers, like a Tremaine Edmonds. I understand Tremaine Edmonds played for a 4-3 defense in Buffalo with Leslie Frazier, but I think plugging him into a 3-4 defense and pairing him next to a guy like you could get a Patrick Queen, that could be your Robin. I mean, that would be so beneficial for those two players because Tremaine Edmonds has that size, but he's also very good in coverage. He's underrated in coverage. He might not be the best, but he's very underrated in coverage, and a lot of people like to diminish his coverage ability. But I think he's a lockdown player in the middle of the field. But he went to a 4-3 defense in Chicago, so I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know if that's going to benefit it because you've got two guys in T.J. Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds are the same player. So I don't know what Chicago's doing there, but if I was running a 3-4, I'm looking for those size, high IQ, and just really good situational awareness where you need to be at the right time.
Well, yeah, because you brought up Josie Jewell of the Denver Broncos, and I think that he gets targeted by tight ends quite a bit for that
Well,
reason.
why is it that he gets targeted? Because he doesn't have great situational awareness and pass coverage. He is an okay run defender at certain points, but again, a lot of his limitations come from the fact that he's not physically gifted as an athlete. But again, I don't think that he is instinctually aware of where to be at the right place at the right time. But again, he doesn't have the athleticism like a Zaven Collins does. He has very stiff hips, and his footwork is just clunky. And if you're looking for the perfect example of what not to be as a linebacker, I think Josie Jewell is the version of that. Not to attack Josie Jewell at all. He was good at Iowa for the system that they were running there. But going to the NFL, it's a different animal.
Yeah, yeah, and I think too, just to be fair to you, is that you do a lot of this explaining. When you do your film work, you explain, this player why he works in a 4-3 system versus, it sounds, again, we will talk with the Broncos again. They got a guy named Sanders, and this can get us into mishmashing. You say Sanders would be a great 4-3 coverage linebacker.
It would
And
be
why
what Domman is for the
3-4, and why does he not fit the 3-4 for that? Especially, we'll just go with coverage. We understand that that's an organization that just, only thinks of edges and can't get themselves beyond that. But you don't want, because they're talking about putting him in coverage, and you said it's not going to work to his strengths. Explain that how a guy like him, putting him in a 3-4 Sanders, that doesn't work in his strengths. Explain how it doesn't work in his strengths.
Well, he's not a Batman. He's not a Batman. I mean, I'm looking, if I'm running a 3-4 defense, I'm looking for a Zaven Collins.
Yeah.
That's just the reality of the situation. And Drew Sanders is like Jo Jo Domman. But again, Jo Jo Domman is in a better situation than Drew Sanders is.
Yeah. Now, so Drew Sanders goes to a 4-3.
Exactly. That's why I was pounding the table for Houston to take him. Because they run the 4-3, what D'Amico Ryans is going to do with a lot of stunt packages, and I think that would benefit him. You put him next to Drew Greenwell and Fred Warner, you put him in with that pairing. I mean, I'm sorry. I apologize. That's the San Francisco team. My apologies. I'm talking about Houston. Sorry. My mind just went to a whole different place. It does that from time to time. But it just doesn't make any sense from a philosophical situation when Drew Sanders is coming to Denver systematic wise.
Maybe even technical.
Well, that too, but philosophically, he doesn't fit what the Denver Broncos, they run a base 4-3. What this is the perfect example. What did Vance Joseph do in Arizona? He coveted Isaiah Simmons. He coveted Zaven Collins. And now you're coveting a 4-3 off-ball linebacker in Drew Sanders. That doesn't make any sense. Drew Sanders would fit with those 4-3 off-ball defenses because he can use his situational awareness when playing off-ball. He doesn't have to be the main Mike. I think that is going to hamper him. And then you have them trying to make him an edge rusher, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever because I don't think that's one of his strengths at all.
Yeah.
And then when he went to Arkansas after playing edge at Alabama, look what happened when they were playing that. He was playing off ball. And what did I show in the film? He was out there with slot receivers. He was out there with receiving backs. There's a reason for that.
Yeah, and I think we were talking just briefly about corners, and I think if you're going to really obsess over a corner, I think you should really try to get yourself that slot corner because it's so difficult to get them. And again, if you got that push up the middle, you don't have to worry about your edge corners, your edge defensive, edge protection as much as you do, that slot because they got to get rid of the ball quicker. So let's move on to organizational dysfunction. I think this is something we really should talk about a lot because it seems like to me the teams that are making the teams that are ahead of their time, are the teams that don't bring in the Tom Brady's. Well, I get to hang out with Tom Brady. The teams that get the cooks out of the kitchen and simplify it to owner stays out except for very rare occasions. You got a solid GM and his backup, his Robin, and then the head coach, so that everybody is just continually on the same sheet of music. It seems like I continually watch teams cut their nose off to spite their face. Everybody's got an opinion. Everybody's got, to put their 2 cents in. And it just seems to me that you got coaches that they end up getting hampered because, say you're an offensive line coach and you say you're on a team for the first time and you're a power gap offensive line coach, but you're being hampered by people upstairs that really don't want to listen to you. The guy that has to, they want to, it's all about their picks and not being in line and in lockstep. So you end up getting guys that are in different systems mishmashed into your offensive line. And then, they ask you to run this type of system, maybe this week, that type of system. And it just seems that these teams are not the successful teams in the NFL.
Well,
or maybe college too. I mean, it's maybe with college, the same thing.
Well, yes, college, it's the same way, just in different contexts than what you hear from NFL. I think bringing up that 2010 through 20, I would say 2013, early 2014 with the Denver Broncos, I think it was the starting point for that. You also had the Patriots during that time that were building and all that. But, you brought up a great point about how, the GM, the Robin to that, Brian Sanders and Adam Peters worked so well together. And I think that's happened in San Francisco with John Lynch and Adam Peters. The reason I'm such a big fan of Adam Peters because I think he should be a GM somewhere. His scouting is so superb. I mean, the Denver Broncos haven't been the same since he left in the scouting department. And when you think about teams like the Chiefs, the Steelers, the Ravens, the Saints finally got their shit together. The one thing that they have in common is just great continuity on what they want to do systematic wise and organization wise.
For years.
Well, for years. Well, the Saints just recently, I mean, they had to clear out a whole bunch of stuff. The Saints were the Denver Broncos back in the day.
Yes.
So, I mean, when you look at it from a wider perspective, I mean, you have the Chiefs that I don't think they're going to slow down at all. I mean, they could have that Patrick Mahomes contract, but what do they have in that front office? Great scouts that find players that fit their system, that don't go out of their way to draft a receiver that isn't the best on his own collegiate team, aka Marvin Mims. They don't need receivers. What they did in this draft is they got defensive line help. They got, more back end help, and it's just more offensive line help. The Colts did the same thing after they drafted that quarterback, which I don't think would benefit them, but whatever. I mean, the Steelers did it too. I mean, the Steelers draft was just unbelievable. But what did they do? They got players from the organization on down that fit what the coaches wanted, and also got players that fit the system systematically. And I think the organizations that are doing that are on top of the league. And I think the organizations that aren't doing that are the bottom feeders, the Broncos, the Jets, the Jaguars. I mean, those teams, the sheer fact that they just go out and, we got a quarterback, we got all this mismatch in the system, we got analytics in the department. I just don't think that is a recipe for success, and I think that's reared its ugly head. And the teams that are going to playoffs consistently, being in Super Bowl contention consistently, are the teams that are just sticking to the identity of football, which is offense, defensive line, and getting players that systematically fit their system.
Well, I want to bring up the success of the Kansas City Chiefs. Just you sent me an article from, I don't know what it was from. It was another one of these media hype machines, and they were talking about how the former chief offensive tackle, I think he's a tackle, Brown,
Orlando Brown. Yep.
Orlando Brown, how that's going to make the team he went to so much better. And we had talked about Orlando Brown in our last video about, he's at the end, the twilight, he's and what Kansas City did is they brought in a guy that isn't is I guess, and doesn't have the veteran, knowledge in his, but what he does have is he has to go from where Brown is beyond that. And that's something, again, analytics doesn't look at. It doesn't look at film, doesn't look at strengths, and doesn't understand. You put the right guy in the right system, his trajectory is going to go up like this. Forget the numbers. Take a look at the guy on film. Look at his upside. See what he brings to the table. Look at the coaching staff he goes to. And unfortunately, I think what happens is, I think with a lot of organization, and this is what your coach in Nebraska there was talking about with Carolina, was the cooks in the kitchen. He said that he was trying to help his coaching staff out. He was trying to get everybody on one sheet of music, but there was all these, everybody had an opinion, right? Everybody had that nobody wanted to be right in lockstep.
Well, I think that's what you're seeing. I think you bring up a great point about Matt Rule in Nebraska. I think that's why he went back to the college ranks and picked Nebraska specifically, because I think that what he recognized is, I could go to a situation at Nebraska where I know that they have the AD in place. I know they have it, but they all have the same sheet of music, like you said. They all want to have the same sheet of music.
Well, they agreed.
But he also brought in coaches. He also brought in coaches that fit what he want, the identity of the team. He didn't go out and get a Clemson offensive coordinator that doesn't run what he wants to run. He went out and got his offense coordinator that he knows that he wants to run offensively. Defensively, same thing. That's the same thing. He brought in a lot of his former ex-player coaches, the Baylor, when he was at Baylor before he went to Carolina. He brought in a lot of those. And the reason I bring that up is because they have continuity and they know what they want to do in terms of the identity of Nebraska. They know that. And then you go to, let's bring this up, Denver. You bring Sean Payton, but you're bringing in people left and right, analytical passing game coordinators that don't have the same vision that Sean Payton wants to do. So you bring up Kansas City, who went out and got Juwan Taylor. I think Orlando Brown is plateaued, and they know what Orlando Brown is. So that's why Kansas City let him go. But they're also getting a guy in Juwan Taylor who's ascending, who's 25 years old, who I wanted the Denver Broncos to get. But again, we can't have that.
Well, and here's Orlando Brown wants to get all this money, right? He wants to get all this money, and then you're stuck with him.
Why did you pick the Kansas City Chiefs? Why did he pick the Kansas City Chiefs?
Because he fit the system.
Well, he did. He fit the system, but he knows what the Kansas City Chiefs want to do offensively, and it fits his strength. It will elevate his strengths more than elevating his weaknesses.
Well, why would he go? Why would he go to a team that mismeshes systems?
Well, why would you stay with the Jacksonville Jaguars who mismesh systems?
You asked Jacksonville again. We talked about this before. Why would you not see that? Of course, I'm not as close to that situation. I don't know if that's the same thing too. That just get good enough. These players just, will just get good, just like the linebacking we were just talking about.
A lot of these players are smarter than you think. They think like you and I. They don't go by Pro Football Focus stats. What they do, I'm telling you, they watch more film than I do. They watch hours upon hours of film. These players aren't stupid.
No, but the sad thing is that we have too many cooks in the kitchen in too many places, and there's not one identity that a lot of these bad situations stick to. Everybody's got an idea, so you get players say, yeah, we'll bring you in, but you don't really fit the system. We're talking about the linebacker Sanders. it's very plausible that this guy's production will be on the decline, as opposed if he went to the place that you were talking, a 4-3, whereas his Robin strengths are more of an incline, is more to incline. That's what I'm seeing. So that's why I like to talk about these things, and different teams. I just don't want to pick on any one. There's plenty of them with problems out there, and plenty of them that are doing it as right as they can. So anyway, that's I just think that's something that should be a focus. You're a guy out in Nebraska. He talks to the I don't know, they're not owners, but they're like the
director, and Trev Alberts is the AD, and they have the chancellor and all that stuff. And
talk to the chancellor, athletic director, and say, we need to be monolithic. This is what wasn't working in the NFL.
Well, I think the chancellor is more important than people think it is, and the reason I'm going to say that is because the guy came from the University of Navy. And what have I been saying? What do I say about those? The Army and the Navy. What do they predicate a lot of their success on?
Annapolis. They came from Annapolis.
Well, okay, the Army, I'm just talking about collegiate-wise, the team, Army and Navy and Air Force. What do they predicate a lot of their success off of? And I've said this to you many times.
Well, I thought they were kind of a run heavy,
but they predicate a lot of their success off of offense and defensive line play.
Okay.
So again, you look at that, and they run a lot of pistol set formation. I'm not saying that Matt Rule's going to do that. But all I am saying is Matt Rule, he said it in his opening, and he's been saying it for months now. And I sent you this, and you said he talks completely different than what you hear from Denver. He talks about offense and defensive line play and how Nebraska needs to get back to that. And I'm telling you right now, when you have a chancellor that understands that formula, and then you have Trev Alberts, who played during that time, who understands that, who's not a meddling athletic director like the previous one that we had. And then you talked about Matt Rule. All those guys have in common is they understand the importance of offense and defensive line play, and systematically. So that's what I'm saying is same sheet of music, right? Bang, bang, bang. And then you have the coaching staff who follows suit with that. The Denver Broncos don't have that. The Jaguars don't have that. The Cleveland Browns don't have that. They don't have that. That follows suit.
Or
that's all I'm getting at.
Well, and I think that by getting Tom Brady, I don't think that's gonna help. I think that's ultimately gonna hurt the Raiders. It's like, did you not learn from the Denver Broncos when, John Elway wanted to play owner, and they haven't got over that yet. So that's going to take a long time to get over.
Yeah.
And then when they get over it, they're going to have to figure out how to get it right. We know how to get it right. The other teams are doing it and can get it right, but they don't see that. They don't have that vision.
Yeah.
That's the vision where your guy went to Nebraska and laid that vision out. So that's kind of like what I do like to do here is go beyond the analytics, look at the film, talk about each situation and, what team would benefit, whether it's the line, whether it's the linebacking, even receivers, for an instance, like you were talking about Mims. And that's what I call that. Again, organizations fall in love with track stars. And I've seen this since the 1970s. They fall in love with track stars, and you can't just be a go route receiver. You can't. But if you're somebody like Mims, you could have went on a team that has a really good receiving, not just one that's a PR creation, but one that actually, is on a receivers that actually produce during the season. You could go to Minnesota. That would probably be a decent, and learn your route running skills. That's where you really needs to pick it up. I don't know if you'll ever be able to block, but but I mean, and that was just it too. I mean, this guy, Sean Pitt, I think the Broncos are an interesting case study because everybody keeps pointing, look what Sean Payton did. Well, look what the Saints did, as well, and that's diametrically opposite.
Who the Saints? Sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
So, I mean, the Saints cut all the fat out, all the talking heads out, all the consolidated the owners into one. And then they got Loomis in Ireland. And then Sean Payton, they all three were working together. Then the defensive coordinator, but they're all in lockstep with the same system, the same type of players, which are diametrically different than anything that happened in this draft. That draft was a front office draft all the way, which tells you're already sabotaging your coach.
Well, just to make this point, and this will be the last thing I say, who is the Adam Peters for the New Orleans Saints?
It'd be Ireland, or it'd be
Jeff
Loomis.
Ireland, who I don't think gets enough credit around the league, quite frankly. He was the one that scouted Ryan Ramczyk. He was the one that got Marshawn Lattimore. That Kamara. That just speaks to the. Kamara wasn't even Ryan Ramczyk, again, everybody loved Garrett Bowles. I just thought Ryan Ramczyk was just a head and shoulders better player than Bowles because he was more technically sound in his game.
Yeah.
It just was mind-boggling to me that people actually thought Garrett Bowles would turn out to be better than Ryan Ramczyk. And I'm like,
well, because they were going by analytics. They weren't going by what their eyeballs, what actual scouts, were looking at. Like,
Ryan Ramczyk was coming from a situation in Wisconsin who has been notorious for developing offensive linemen.
Well, and you get into your film study as to why, this person has physical attributes, but they're lacking here in this,
Why did I like Rashawn Slater? Because of his technique. Everybody laughed at my face. Rashawn Slater has turned out to, without the injuries, this guy would be up there with the Ramczyks, the Wirfs, the Ronnie Stanleys.
Oh, you can still do that. Well, you went and scouted Jordan Rhodes, and I think speaking of New Orleans, and this guy absolutely fits the system.
And it's ironic that he went there too. It was perfect timing for him to go there, and I think that is going to benefit him greatly. I mean,
it will.
You're not going to have the pressure to play right away, and you can be a swing guard for a year or two under Cesar Ruiz and Eric McCoy and Andrew Pete, who Pete isn't the same player he was 3-4 years ago, but I'm saying he's going to get development there. And then you have Doug Marrone as your O-line coach. I mean, and I did a video on my channel of him talking about O-line technique, like it's, the godsend of everything, which I've been saying since day one. I mean, these coaches, I don't think people understand. When my mind goes to places that is up there with scouts and coaches, ladies and I'm not sitting here giving you bullshit. I mean, these coaches look at the same things I'm looking at with much detail. You don't think that Travis Jones went to the Ravens for coincident he went there? You don't think Jordan Rhodes went to
Jones? There's another guy I wanted to spot.
He might not be the elite player that a lot of people are looking for, but my God, he would look. The Denver Broncos are in need of depth on that D-line. Travis Jones provides that, and he's a develop. I mean, it's not a coincidence that these players that I scouted, Osiris Torrance went to the Bills, Steve Avila went to the Rams. The good teams that get it, they're getting players that I'm scouting here. I'm not trying to, not saying I'm the only one scouting these players, but I'm just saying Jo Jo Domman's that he went to a 4-3 system.
Yeah, exactly. And we're not talking, these aren't like the
Jack Campbell
first round. These are developmental guys because we believe as a philosophy that, you have to supplement, your team. We talked about that, but I want to talk about the swing tackle thing a little bit. People get caught up with swing tackles. Well, we'll get him because he's a swing, he's just a swing tackle. But I don't like to use the word swing tackle. Or swing guards. I don't like using the term swing offensive line. What I like to use, I want to say instead of swing, is depth. Your line has depth. Your line depth. You can put that guy at tackle because forget the swing. Line depth. You have created. Forget the catchy little terms. It comes down to line depth. That's why you have a swing tackle, because you have line depth, 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 depth. And the guys that you pick out are the guys that supplement that depth.
Well, they're the foundation of it. They're the foundation of that depth that you're talking about.
And then the swing stuff comes by all on its own.
Well, you talk about that, and let's go to the defensive line. I think that's another point. I mean, you can have. I mean, my God. I mean, what are the Buffalo Bills are a perfect example of this. When the Denver Broncos got their asses whooped in the preseason, and you and I were, accused of getting, the reason why me and this guy were so pissed is because they were going 3, 4, 5 deep on their team with depth.
Yes.
It was just, I was just like sitting there. I'm like, oh, Denver Broncos are in trouble because
the third, fourth, we're doing circles around there. Second.
Yeah, exactly.
Here.
Exactly.
Because
I mean, that defense
comes down to franchises that understand depth versus ones that are swinging for the reach.
Same thing.
They're swinging for the reach.
The Chiefs do it.
Yes, that's why they're going to be dominant for quite a while.
The what is another one? The Eagles. I mean, man, dude, that defensive line goes that defensive line goes 3-5 deep too. I mean, when you get Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, Fletcher Cox, Mario Williams, I mean, they go 3-5 deep on their defensive front, especially on that offensive line. That offensive line, they got offensive linemen in the draft too. I mean, it's not a coincidence that the good teams in the league go 3-5 deep. I think you're right. I think you're onto something. I think you need to at least go 3-5 deep to even have a chance in this league now, because injuries, all the above, in terms of schematics. I mean, the Buffalo Bills are the perfect example of that. They were building that whole entire depth, and then they got the players. They got the Ed Olivers. They got the Von Miller. They got that with the depth, the foundation already in place.
Exactly. They keep, and you got to keep supplementing that depth. Now I'm going to go and switch to defensive line, but X's and O's, because I thought about this. I just want to get your take on it. What do you think about rotating defensive linemen? Give me your take on rotating defense.
I love it. I would rotate defensive linemen. The Denver Broncos did that in Super Bowl 50. They rotated. I think you have to have a rotation on that defensive line.
Yeah, I believe, though, in my belief, that you shouldn't overdo the rotation, because I think as an offensive coordinator, I'm going to put you in situations and rotations. I know you're going to rotate, and I'm going to keep you in that situation when I go to my hurry up. I'm going to make sure that you're stuck in that rotational. I'm more of a limited rotational type of a person.
Well, okay.
If you have a good offensive coordinator.
Well, here's the thing. If you have you have you have a Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Fletcher Cox, Mario Williams. They all have the same traits, and they all fit the same system, what they want to do.
Oh, there you go. There you go. So you're really not.
Yep.
You're really not changing anything.
You're rotating the same players over and over again, and you're keeping them fresh. That's what I'm trying to say.
That's why you supplement, and that's why you stay monolithic. Unlike teams that say, "Oh, well, you fit that system, you fit this system." You're rated by analytics really good, but once we get in these situations, well, you're not good when it comes, because you're not as good as the other guy you just replaced in this situation, which you would have been if we would have just stuck with the same type of personnel system people.
Why do the Eagles and Bills go 3-5 deep? Because they have the same players that fit the same system, that have the same strengths, and that understand it. I mean, Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, Fletcher Cox, Mario Williams, you can rotate those guys.
Yes. And you're
rotating because
you're staying monolithic. You're staying, yes.
Correct.
Within who you are. Yeah, I think these are things that just don't get discussed and don't get talked about, because everything's hype with this football. I'm sure everything we're talking about is boring to the highlight reel fans, but I think there's people that will appreciate these kind of conversations. Anything else?
Nope, that's it for me.
Me too. Next time I'll be better. I'll have better notes and stuff. I should have, But
I thought today's discussion, to be honest with you, I thought it was a good discussion, especially with this rotation thing. I think it needed to be said, and I think that I think you like the Eagles and the Bills have something in common. They got Tim Settle, they got Ed Oliver, they got all those guys that are same monolithically and same systematically that they can just rotate them. And I think that's what I was talking about with rotation is the Eagles do it so well.
And Buffalo too, right? San Francisco, but maybe Steelers are also like that as well.
Oh, San Francisco's at it too. I mean, you add Javon Hargrave to that D line I mean, they still have that D line depth. So again, they understand it, and I think that's what a lot of teams especially the good teams have geared towards. You've seen the Steelers do it. You're seeing the Ravens do it. Travis Jones, he fits them, and then you have those guys at top. But then if those top, you need to rotate them. Okay, insert Travis Jones. Insert Tim Settle.
Exactly.
Insert Jalen Carter.
All Batmans, but that's not what you need. You need to have the solid foundational players that you can rotate. Good. Cool. I'll let you go.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.